Hi everyone, Taylor with Prep Talk. Wanted to follow up with my last video about our episode of being caught in Katrina and the situation of being really caught without any preps or any supplies and how that really affected us. As I mentioned in my last video that I posted, finding the only source of food at that gas station and going into that little mini mart that they had there and finding people just grabbing everything that they could off the shelves. It was really an ugly time because I was truly prepared to do whatever it took, whether it means, having to get physical or whatever to get the food for my son and myself, because we didn't have any other option. There was no other place we could go to get any provisions at the time. So I was able to pick up a couple of pieces of chicken, a couple of potato logs, and a couple of bottles of Gatorade, because that's basically all there was. Everything else had been pretty well picked over. So after I was able to pay with cash there for those food items, we headed back to the hotel. And it was really interesting as we were driving. In fact, after we got out of the car at the hotel, once again, the power is still off everywhere. But in looking up at the sky, the cloud pattern was so very unique because obviously it was overcast and the clouds were kind of swirling, but there were like a lot of smaller almost tornado-looking like swirls around the major swirl that was going on up above us. And so we immediately jumped out of the car and took our meager provisions and went into our hotel room. And since the power was off, we couldn't really get any kind of an update from the TV or anything. And so we decided, well, the hurricane is on its way to hit us here in Meridian. What do we do in the meanwhile? We thought we'd try to read a little bit, but we were just too distracted. You'd read a few lines and then you'd look out the window to see what was going on, and that just didn't work out very well. So we figured, how often does someone get to experience a hurricane? Once again, a little bit of a naive attitude. And we thought we really would like to experience this as much as we can. And so we decided we'd go back and get out in the car. And we moved the car out into kind of an empty area in the parking lot between our hotel and the next hotel. There were no other vehicles around, and we just wanted to park out in the middle of it where we could kind of feel and watch the actual tornado and sense what it was like. We were able to get a local radio channel. It was just some small little outfit right there in Meridian itself that was broadcasting, and it would fade in and out as we were listening to it. But they would be giving us, up to the minute broadcasts and information and updates as to what was going on. And it was there actually listening to that radio broadcast when they mentioned all these little tornadoes that were actually being set off in the area. That when a hurricane takes place and comes through, it's a very natural occurrence for it to set off small tornadoes. And so they were telling, what areas and what neighborhoods, etc., where these tornadoes were touching down and creating additional havoc and damage. So as we were sitting there in the car, charging up our batteries with an inverter we had in the car and everything, and the wind started picking up, and of course it was shaking the car pretty violently. And as we were listening to the radio, we understood that the winds were now exceeding 100 miles per hour, and the trees were just swaying heavily, and debris was starting to blow all over the place. And then the brunt of it hit us. That's when it got really wild. In fact, right before that point, a little sideline, we thought, well, here, 100-mile-an-hour winds, that'd be pretty neat to try to see if you could stand up in that. And so my son and I actually took a few turns jumping out of the car real quick and seeing if we could stand up in the storm and then jump back in the car, because how often do you experience that kind of a wind? Well, then the wind started increasing even from there, and now rather than just the trees being blown back and forth, trees started being uprooted. And heavy debris started flying, and pieces of metal, we know some, and roofing off of the hotel next to ours were flying off the top of the building, and glass was shattering, windows were breaking, and we watched one big piece of metal come off the top of the building and just like a spear go right through a parked car in the parking lot. We noticed that billboards were being blown over. And there was all kinds of debris flying all over the place. And I thought maybe this isn't the safest place to be, but we'd kind of committed ourselves to be there. And so for a period of about a half an hour, it was really kind of dicey. There was a lot of damage taking place all around us. And it was kind of a scary time, actually. And then as the storm passed and went beyond us, things began to change a little bit. And of course, it was still kind of raining, but the wind wasn't as heavy. And we thought that, it would be very interesting just to drive around a little bit to see if we could see what the damage was like. And in spite of the fact that the curfew was still in place, we decided to go for it. And so we started driving around a little bit. And once again, it really looked like a war zone is what it looked like. And it didn't take long as we just kind of drove around a block or two that we realized that it was going to be some time before this was, brought back to normal. It was going to be several days before there was electricity restored to this area. I mean, the damage was pretty significant. And so we thought, we don't have enough food really to last that long. Maybe if we went to another city, we could get some more provisions. And so we made the decision right then that we were going to hightail it out to Jackson, Mississippi, which is a town about 60 miles west of Meridian. And we thought surely they would have stuff because I'm sure they weren't hit as hard as we were hit. And so we got out on I-20 and immediately realized that this was going to be a difficult journey. In fact, wishing we had a 4x4 because there were trees blown down across the road. There was debris all over the roads, and we were the only ones out there. There was no one else on the road because they were smarter than we were. And so oftentimes, as we started our trek towards Jackson, we would have to go off the road and down around debris and up and back and forth. And it was indeed a scary time. This was now about 5 o'clock in the afternoon when we decided to head towards Jackson. And that experience really taught us a lot. And so in my next video, I'll take a little bit of time to first of all explain what happened to us on the way to Jackson and then what happened on the way back. And so till next time, see you soon.